I never thought I would be that woman, the one who secretly watches her husband, wondering if the love of her life has someone else. But here I was, sitting alone in the faculty lounge after class, staring at my phone while trying to push away the gnawing feeling in my gut and failing miserably. My name is Hannah Walker. I am 33 years old, a first-grade teacher at a small elementary school in Portland, Maine. I love my job, I love my students, and I used to love my life with an easy kind of certainty. For almost 10 years, my husband Daniel and I built what I thought was a happy, stable marriage. We had our ups and downs, sure, but we always had each other. Or so I believed. Lately, something had shifted. Daniel had been different for months now. More distracted, more secretive, and constantly glued to his phone. He had always been an honest, hardworking man, a lawyer with a calm way of handling everything from difficult clients to household problems. But suddenly, he was taking frequent business trips that I had never heard of before, often overnight, and he never shared details. He would step outside to answer calls, whispering into his phone while pacing on the porch, and when he came back inside, he would smile too brightly as if he was performing happiness for me. It was subtle at first, something I could have ignored if not for the feeling in my chest every time he locked his phone as soon as I entered the room. Daniel had always been relaxed about his phone, leaving it on the kitchen counter or next to me on the couch. Now it was like an extension of his body, always in his pocket or face down on the table. I tried telling myself I was imagining it. Maybe work was simply overwhelming him. Maybe the changes were all in my head, triggered by stress from school or lack of sleep. But then my best friend, Lily Harper, planted the thought I had been too scared to say out loud. "You sure he's not seeing someone?" she asked one Saturday morning over coffee. Lily is 32, a single mom, and one of the strongest women I know. She was also left pregnant and alone by a man who swore he loved her, so her trust in men had been shattered years ago. She still carried that wound in her voice, even when she tried to hide it. "Hannah, I'm telling you, these sudden business trips, the phone glued to his hand, the weird smiles, I've seen it before. I lived it." I hated that her words found a home inside me. They latched onto every memory of Daniel coming home late, every vague text message he refused to explain, every distant look when he thought I wasn't watching. The worst part, I didn't know if Lily was wrong. I stared at the wedding ring on my finger that evening as Daniel packed another suitcase for yet another overnight client meeting. He smiled when I asked where exactly he was going, but gave me no clear answer. I forced myself to smile back, even though something inside me ached so hard I wanted to scream. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But a seed of doubt had been planted, and it was growing fast, twisting itself into every thought I had. I lay awake at night, imagining him with another woman, laughing, touching, living a life I didn't know about. And once that kind of image forms in your mind, it's almost impossible to erase. I loved Daniel, but for the first time since I met him, I wasn't sure if he still loved me. And that uncertainty? It was enough to make me do something I never imagined I would. Before all of this, before the secrecy, the late-night phone calls, and the hollow smiles, Daniel was my safe place. We met when I was 21, still in college, still figuring out who I wanted to be. I was the shy girl who always sat in the back of the lecture hall with my notebooks perfectly organized, but hardly ever raised my hand. Daniel, on the other hand, was impossible to ignore. He had this magnetic presence, not loud or arrogant, but warm and full of life. Back then, he wasn't a lawyer, he was a musician, playing guitar in a small band that performed in little bars and coffee shops along the coast. I met him one rainy Friday evening in a cafe by the harbor. I was there studying for an exam, trying to block out the storm outside, when his voice cut through the chatter. He was on stage with a guitar, singing a cover of a song I loved. Something about the way he sang, calm but full of soul, made me look up. And then he looked at me, right at me, and smiled. After the set, he walked straight to my table. "You looked like you needed a break from whatever you're reading," he said with that same easy grin. I was blushing so hard I could barely answer. We talked until closing time, and I left that cafe knowing my life had just shifted. From that night on, we were inseparable. He wrote me little songs on his guitar. I made him study flashcards for his law prerequisite classes when he decided to apply to law school. When I found out I was pregnant a year later, I panicked. I thought it would derail his dreams. But Daniel didn't hesitate. He said, "Then we build a dream together. You, me, and this baby." He gave up the band. He gave up late nights in crowded clubs and the possibility of a music career because he wanted stability for us. He went to law school and worked part-time, juggling classes and jobs while I finished my teaching degree. It was hard. Some days, we barely had enough money to cover groceries. But we were happy because we had each other. I still remember the day Noah was born. Daniel holding my hand, whispering, "You're stronger than anyone I know," while tears streamed down his face. He stayed up with me through endless nights of feedings, changed diapers, and somehow managed to keep going to work in the morning. For years, I told everyone I hit the jackpot. Daniel was kind, thoughtful, and so loyal it almost embarrassed me when Lily compared her string of failed relationships to what I had. But looking back now, maybe that's why it hurt so much to see him change. Because we weren't just husband and wife, we were a team. We had survived our 20s together, building a life out of nothing. We had a sweet little house, a 7-year-old boy who adored his dad, and a rhythm that worked. We didn't have wild parties or exotic vacations, but we had late-night takeout on the porch, movie marathons in pajamas, and afternoons chasing Noah around the yard. That life was enough for me. It had always been enough. So why wasn't it enough for him anymore? Those nights when he said he had to travel for work, I would lie in bed and remember the boy who used to write songs for me, who once promised he would never hurt me. I could still see him sitting on the edge of our bed, tuning his guitar, smiling at me like I was the only person in the world. That memory used to feel like home. Now it felt like something slipping through my fingers, something I might never get back. I tried to rationalize it. People change, jobs get stressful, marriages evolve. But deep down, I miss the man who once held my face in his hands and said, "You're my whole life, Hannah." I missed the simplicity of those early years, when the only secrets between us were what kind of birthday cake I was planning or what song he was learning for me. The distance I felt now didn't just scare me, it broke me in ways I couldn't explain. Because if a man who once gave up everything for you can grow distant, if the love you believed in can falter this easily, what does that say about everything you built together? I lay awake thinking about it, clutching my pillow as though it could hold me together. And I whispered to the dark, "What happened to us, Daniel? What happened to the life we promised each other?" I didn't have an answer. All I had was the sinking feeling that I was losing him, and the terrifying thought that maybe I already had. Lily Harper had always been my truth teller, even when I didn't want to hear it. She had been through her own heartbreak, a man who promised her the world only to vanish when she was pregnant with her daughter. That betrayal shaped her view of men, leaving her fiercely independent but undeniably bitter. One afternoon, I sat at her kitchen table while Noah played with her little girl, coloring pictures on the floor. Lily poured coffee into mismatched mugs, her eyes narrowing as I told her about Daniel's late nights and sudden work trips. "You sure he's not seeing someone?" she asked, leaning back in her chair like she already knew the answer. I froze. "Lily, Daniel's not like that." She gave a humorless laugh. "That's what I thought about Jason. He swore he was faithful too, right up until I found his second phone." Her words landed like stones in my stomach. "You don't know Daniel," I said softly, but even I heard the waver in my voice. "Listen, Hannah, I'm not saying he's guilty," Lily continued, her tone softening. "But the phone glued to his hand? The trips that make no sense? People don't just change for no reason. Something's going on." I wanted to snap at her, tell her to stop projecting her past onto my life, but instead I sat there in silence. Because she wasn't wrong about the changes in Daniel. I started noticing every little thing I had brushed off before. The way he smiled at his phone and quickly turned it face down when I walked into the room. How he lingered outside to take calls he said were work-related. How he smelled faintly of cologne he hadn't worn in years when he came home from meetings. One day, fate twisted the knife a little deeper. I bumped into one of Daniel's old colleagues at the grocery store, a man named Peter, who had always liked to chat. I mentioned Daniel's frequent travel, joking about how busy law firms must be. Peter looked puzzled. Travel? We haven't had any out-of-town cases in months. That night, when Daniel said he had to leave early for yet another client visit, I stared at him differently. My husband, the man who once held nothing back, was now someone I couldn't read at all. The more I thought about Lily's warning, the more it made sense. She had planted a seed of doubt, and it grew quickly, wrapping itself around my heart until I couldn't breathe without wondering who Daniel was texting or where he really was when he claimed to be working. I hated myself for it. I hated Lily a little for saying it out loud. And most of all, I hated the cold truth. I didn't trust my own husband anymore. That night, I lay in bed long after Daniel left for his trip. Noah was asleep down the hall, the house too quiet, too still. I stared at the ceiling and whispered to myself, what if he's with someone else right now? What if he's holding another woman the way he used to hold me? Tears pricked my eyes, but I didn't cry. Instead, I grabbed my phone and texted Lily, "What would you do if you were me?" She replied almost instantly, I'd find out the truth. And that was the moment something inside me shifted. I wasn't just scared anymore. I was determined. If there was a secret, I was going to uncover it. If there was a lie, I was going to catch it. Because I couldn't live like this, trapped in doubt, slowly unraveling every memory we had built. I needed answers, even if they destroyed me. The next morning, I woke up with a decision I couldn't take back. I was done guessing. I needed the truth, no matter how much it hurt. Lily didn't even blink when I told her my plan. "Good," she said, arms folded as if she'd been waiting for this moment. "He needs to be caught if he's lying to you." Her confidence scared me. I wasn't trying to catch Daniel like some criminal. I just needed to know who he really was when I wasn't around. "Okay," I whispered, gripping the edge of her kitchen counter. "What do I do?" She leaned in like she was sharing a secret. "You disappear. Tell him you have to go out of town for a few days, some teacher conference, whatever. Make sure he believes you'll be gone. Then watch what he does when the house is his." The idea made my stomach twist. I wasn't sneaky by nature. I was the kind of person who still double-checked if I'd accidentally cut in line at the grocery store. And yet, here I was, planning to spy on my husband. That night, I told Daniel I had been selected for a professional development workshop in Boston. He looked surprised. "Boston? For how long?" "Just a few days," I said lightly. "Principal wants me to go. Something about curriculum updates." He nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll manage Noah." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. It stung, how easily he accepted my absence. While he was at work the next day, I installed a small camera near the front door and another in the living room. It felt wrong, standing on a chair to adjust an angle while my wedding photo smiled down at me from the wall. But wrong or not, I needed clarity. When Friday came, Daniel drove me to the train station, kissed me on the cheek, and waved as I rolled my suitcase inside. He thought I was heading south. In reality, I doubled back once he left and drove straight to our old family beach house in Casco Bay. That beach house used to be our summer sanctuary, a little weathered cottage by the water, with white shutters and a porch swing Daniel had installed himself. We hadn't used it much since Noah was born, too busy with work and school schedules. Now it became my hideout. I set up my laptop on the small kitchen table, connected to the camera feeds, and stared at the empty view of my own home. My heart pounded like I had committed a crime. What if he did bring someone home? What if Lily was right? Would I confront him? Divorce him? Could I even look at him again? I tried to distract myself by cleaning, unpacking, even walking down to the beach, but every few minutes I checked the feed. Each time, the living room sat silent, unchanged, like the calm before a storm. As the sun set and the sea breeze chilled my skin, I stood on the porch, hugging my sweater tight. I thought about the man who once played me songs under this same night sky, promising we'd always be honest with each other. I whispered into the wind, "Please, Daniel, don't prove me wrong." Then I went inside, closed the laptop for a moment, and tried to breathe. Tomorrow would bring answers I wasn't sure I was ready to face. The first night passed with nothing unusual. Daniel came home, made dinner for Noah, helped him with homework, and then they watched a movie together. He even paused halfway through to send me a picture of them on the couch, both smiling at the camera with bowls of popcorn in their laps. For a moment, I almost convinced myself I'd made a mistake, that this whole thing was ridiculous and unnecessary. But doubt doesn't vanish that easily, especially once it has its hooks in you. The next day, I sat on the porch of the beach house, the salty breeze tangling my hair, while my laptop showed every angle of our living room. Hours crawled by. I walked to the shoreline through pebbles into the waves, tried to focus on lesson plans I'd brought with me. Anything to feel normal. But every few minutes, I checked the feed, waiting for something. Anything to confirm or deny the gnawing suspicion in my chest. Late in the afternoon, my phone buzzed. Daniel had texted, "Working late. Don't wait up. Love you. Working late," I whispered, gripping the edge of the porch railing. My pulse thudded in my ears as I hurried back inside to the laptop. For a long moment, the house feed was empty. Then the front door opened. Daniel stepped inside, still in his work clothes, but he wasn't alone. A woman followed him in. My hands went cold. She was young, maybe mid-20s, with long brown hair and a nervous look on her face. Daniel said something I couldn't hear, set his briefcase down, and took her coat, hanging it carefully on the rack. Then they walked into the kitchen together. I stared at the screen, my heart hammering so hard it hurt. My husband, my Daniel, had brought another woman into our home. I felt sick. My fingers hovered over my phone. I wanted to call him, scream at him, demand to know who she was and why she was in our house. But I couldn't move. Instead, I just watched. Daniel poured her a cup of coffee, gesturing for her to sit. They talked, his body language calm, even gentle. Once, she reached up and wiped her eyes, and he handed her a tissue. My mind raced. Is he comforting her? Is she crying over him? Or because of something else? I wanted to believe it was innocent, that maybe she was a client or a distant relative I didn't know about. But Lily's voice echoed in my head. People don't change for no reason. Something's going on. I called Lily, my voice shaking as I explained what I was seeing. She didn't even hesitate. "That's it, Hannah. He's cheating. No one brings a woman home when their wife's supposed to be out of town unless it's something more. You need to confront him. End this charade before it gets worse." I sat there, tears streaming down my cheeks, listening to Lily's certainty while staring at the screen. The woman was still in my kitchen, talking to my husband like she belonged there. Daniel leaned against the counter, arms crossed, listening intently. I closed the laptop abruptly, unable to watch any longer. My hands trembled so badly I had to grip the edge of the table to steady them. This was it, the moment my marriage fell apart. The beach house, once a place of peace, now felt like a cage. I paced the small kitchen, whispering to myself, "Why, Daniel? After everything we built, why would you do this?" For hours, I sat in silence, numb and shaking, imagining every possible betrayal. By midnight, I made a decision I hadn't planned on making so soon. I was going home. I couldn't stay away one more day while my husband entertained another woman in the house we built together. I grabbed my keys, tossed my bag in the car, and drove back through the dark, windy roads toward Portland. The whole way, one thought pounded in my mind like a drum. He lied to me, and I'm going to find out why. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway, except for a single light in the kitchen. My heart was beating so fast it felt like it might burst. I gripped the steering wheel and took a deep breath before stepping out. Inside, I heard voices, low, calm, nothing romantic or intimate, just serious. I crept closer, my shoes silent on the hardwood floor, and then I saw them. Daniel and the young woman were sitting at the table. She was crying again, dabbing her eyes with tissues while Daniel sat across from her, his hands folded, his face lined with concern. I froze in the doorway. Daniel. They both looked up, startled. Hannah, he said, standing so fast his chair scraped the floor. What are you doing here? I thought you were in Boston. I ignored the question, my voice shaking. Who is she? The woman sniffled and looked down, like she wanted to disappear. Daniel turned back to me, eyes wide, palms open. She's my cousin, Hannah. Emily. Cousin? My mind raced, trying to piece that together. I had never met an Emily. Daniel continued quickly. Her husband's been abusive. She showed up at my office today because she didn't know where else to go. I couldn't let her go back there. I looked at Emily properly for the first time. Her wrist was bruised, faint but visible where her sleeve had slipped back. Her face was pale and swollen from crying, and suddenly she didn't look like a stranger invading my home. She looked like a woman trying to survive. I opened my mouth, closed it, then finally whispered, "Why didn't you tell me?" Daniel sighed, running a hand over his face. Because she begged me not to. She's terrified her husband will find out where she is. I thought giving you one more thing to worry about would be unfair. I wanted to wait until she was safe. The anger I had carried all weekend wavered, confusion replacing it. But Juliet, you said you were working late. I know. I'm sorry. His voice cracked slightly. I was just trying to protect her privacy, and maybe, if I'm being honest, protect you from all of this. I didn't want you worrying about the danger she's in. I thought I could handle it myself for a day or two. I stood there, feeling like the floor had shifted beneath me. I had built an entire scenario in my head, one where Daniel had betrayed me, one where my marriage was collapsing, and now I was staring at his cousin, a scared woman with nowhere else to go. Daniel took a step toward me, his eyes searching mine. You think I'd cheat on you? After everything we've been through? Hannah, I gave up my music career for us. I built this life for you and Noah. You're my whole world. I felt the tears rise before I could stop them. I didn't know what to think. You've been so distant, Daniel. Secretive. I put cameras in the house. His eyes widened. Cameras. I nodded, shame burning through me. I lied about Boston. I was at the beach house watching everything. I saw her walk in, and I thought, my voice broke. I thought I'd lost you. For a long moment, there was silence except for Emily's quiet sniffles. Then Daniel stepped closer, gently cupping my face in his hands. You didn't lose me, Hannah. But if you don't trust me, we have a bigger problem than any cousin on my couch. The truth of that hit hard. My doubts had eaten holes through something that used to be unshakable. And now, standing there with tears streaming down my face, I realized I had a choice. Keep feeding those doubts or fight to rebuild what we had. Daniel's voice softened. I love you. I've always loved you. Please don't let this break us. I nodded slowly, wiping my eyes. I don't want it to. I need us to be honest. No more secrets. No more secrets, he promised. That night, Emily stayed in the guest room, safe for the first time in weeks. And I lay in bed next to Daniel, clutching his hand like I hadn't in months, feeling a fragile but real relief. I hadn't lost him, but I had almost let my fear take him from me anyway. The next morning, I woke to the smell of coffee and the soft sound of Noah's laughter drifting from the kitchen. For the first time in weeks, there was no knot of anxiety in my stomach. Instead, there was something quieter, fragile, but hopeful. Daniel was at the stove, flipping pancakes while Noah sat at the counter, chattering about a school project. Emily, still a little pale but calmer, was quietly sipping coffee. She gave me a shy smile, one that said thank you without words. After breakfast, Emily left for a safe house that Daniel had arranged through a local advocacy group. We watched her drive away, and I felt a strange mix of guilt and relief. My jealousy and fear had twisted everything. What I had seen as betrayal had been compassion, my husband helping someone who needed him. When the house was quiet again, I turned to Daniel. "We need to talk," I said softly. He nodded, leading me to the porch where the autumn sunlight touched everything with a golden warmth. We sat there for a long moment, the ocean wind carrying the scent of salt and pine. "I'm sorry," I said finally, "for lying about the conference, for spying, for doubting you." My hands trembled as I twisted them in my lap. I let Lily's fears get into my head. I didn't trust my own husband, and that's on me. Daniel shook his head gently. "No, Hannah, I should have told you about Emily. I thought I was protecting you, but what I did looked like exactly what you feared. That's on me too." We sat there looking at each other, really looking at each other, for the first time in months. I realized how far apart we had drifted, how silence and assumptions had built walls between us. "I don't want us to keep secrets anymore," I said. "Even the ones meant to protect each other. If we're worried if something's wrong, we talk about it." Daniel reached for my hand. "Agreed. No more walls." He paused, his eyes soft. "Would you consider marriage counseling? Not because we're broken, but because I don't want us to get lost like this again." I blinked, surprised, then nodded. "Yes, I'd like that." In the weeks that followed, we began to heal, not instantly, not perfectly, but with intention. Counseling forced us to say things we'd both been holding back. My lingering insecurity since Noah's birth, Daniel's stress about work, and his fear of letting me down. We learned to listen, not just hear. I also had a long talk with Lily. She looked ashamed when I told her what had really happened. "I'm so sorry, Hannah," she whispered. I didn't want you to go through what I went through." "I know," I said gently, "but not every man is Jason. Daniel's not him." Lily nodded, wiping her eyes. That conversation didn't just heal something between us. It seemed to shift something in her too. She joined a support group for single moms, and for the first time in years, I saw her smile without bitterness. As for me, I found new ways to take care of myself. I started doing morning yoga, something to calm my mind before the day began. I joined a book club, reconnected with friends I had pulled away from when life got busy. Slowly, I felt more like me again, not the anxious wife waiting for disaster, but the woman who had once fallen in love with a musician who gave up everything for family. One weekend, we went back to the beach house, just the three of us. Daniel grilled fish on the porch. Noah built sand castles by the water, and I sat with a blanket wrapped around my shoulders, watching them and feeling my heart settle into something steady. There was still work to do. Trust isn't rebuilt in one conversation, and forgiveness takes time. But as I watched Daniel laugh with our son, I realized something important. The life we had wasn't gone. It had just been waiting for us to choose it again, together. That night, Daniel slipped his arms around me as we stood by the water under a sky full of stars. "Thank you for staying," he whispered. And for the first time in a long time, I felt whole enough to say, I never really left. Weeks turned into months, and little by little, our marriage began to feel like it used to. Only stronger, because now we understood how fragile trust really was. We kept our promise, no more secrets. Even small things like stressful days at work or feelings of insecurity, we shared instead of burying them. Counseling gave us tools we never had before. Daniel learned how to communicate his stress without shutting down, and I learned how to express fear without letting it grow into suspicion. We built habits, small check-ins at night, honest talks over morning coffee, that kept us connected even on hectic days. One evening, as the last light faded over the ocean near the beach house, I stood on the porch watching Noah chase fireflies. Daniel wrapped his arms around me from behind. "Do you ever think about that weekend?" he asked quietly. I nodded. "All the time, but not the way I used to." Because now, when I thought of that weekend, it wasn't just about suspicion and fear. It was also about what came after. The choice to stay, to rebuild, to heal together. "I almost lost us, Daniel," I whispered. "Not because of what you did, but because of what I believed." He turned me gently to face him, his eyes warm and steady. "We both made mistakes, but look where we are now." And he was right. That beach house, once a place where I had hidden from the truth, had become our sanctuary again. It wasn't haunted by doubts anymore. It felt like home. Even Lily changed. She stopped seeing men as threats and started seeing her own worth again. She told me one night over wine, "Watching you two work through that, it made me realize I've been living in fear for too long." She smiled, truly smiled, something I hadn't seen in years. The truth is, every marriage faces storms, some bigger than others. Ours came from silence and fear, but it taught us that healing isn't about pretending nothing happened. It's about choosing to face the hard parts and love each other through them. Now, when I look at Daniel, I don't see the man I almost accused of betraying me. I see my husband, the man who gave up his dreams once to build a life with me, the man who still stands by me even when I stumble. One night, as Noah fell asleep in the back seat after a beach day, Daniel reached for my hand. "You know what I realized," he said. "Trust isn't about never being afraid. It's about holding on anyway." I smiled, squeezing his hand. "Yeah, it is." And in that quiet moment, driving home under the stars, I realized something important. I hadn't just found out the truth about Daniel that weekend. I had found out the truth about us. We weren't perfect, but we were stronger than I ever imagined. Sometimes healing doesn't look like starting over. Sometimes it looks like staying and choosing each other all over again. And I was grateful that, even in the middle of my fear, I chose to stay